I used to think loyalty was a currency everyone valued. I thought if you worked hard, stayed honest, and didn't make waves, the world would treat you fairly in return. Turns out that's the kind of thinking that leaves you stranded in a foreign country with no ticket home. When my boss said, "We'll cover your expenses when you're back, if you still are," I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. It all started in Prague, my first international trip for the company. I was 29, a project manager for a mid-sized tech firm that loved to call itself family. We were pitching a deal to a European client that could have doubled our revenue for the quarter. I'd worked on the proposal for 6 months straight. Late nights, last-minute changes, coffee for dinner. My boss, Martin, was the kind of man who never raised his voice, but could destroy your confidence with a sentence. And Dylan, my coworker, the charming one, was his golden boy. The kind of guy who never carried a notebook, but always seemed to take credit for what was written in it. When Martin picked us for the trip, I was stupidly grateful. He said, "Evan, you've earned this. You'll handle the tech presentation. Dylan will handle the client relations." It sounded fair, until it wasn't. The first 3 days went smoothly. Meetings, dinners, the usual dance of suits and small talk. The client, a Czech logistics firm, loved the concept. They even hinted at signing early. Then on the fourth night, everything started to tilt. We were checking out of the hotel for our flight home when the receptionist frowned. "Sir, the card is declined." Martin gave a tight smile. "Try again." She did, 3 times. Same result. He pulled me aside. "Company card's frozen for some reason. Must be an authorization issue. I'll head to the airport, call finance, and fix it before you check out. Stay here for now." It sounded reasonable. Dylan even nodded, trying to look reassuring. "We'll meet you at the gate, man." They left. That was at 8:30 a.m. By 1 p.m., I knew something was wrong. No messages, no calls. The hotel manager kept hovering like I was a criminal. Finally, I paid for the room myself, nearly emptied my savings, and took a cab to the airport. Their flight? Gone. My name wasn't even on the booking anymore. I stood there in the departure hall, staring at the digital board like it could explain what just happened. Then I checked my email. One new message from Martin. We had to make an urgent decision. The client requested immediate clarification, and I couldn't risk further delays. "We'll discuss your conduct when you're back." My conduct. That word hit harder than the bill. I called, straight to voicemail. Tried Dylan. Same. Texted both. Nothing. So I booked the cheapest return flight I could find. A connecting nightmare through Munich and Toronto. Paid entirely on my personal credit card. No reimbursements. No calls. I remember staring out the airplane window that night, the city lights shrinking under the wing, and thinking, maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe they'll apologize when I land. They didn't. When I got home, my phone finally lit up. A single message from Dylan. "Hope you got back okay, man. Martin said you left early. Crazy misunderstanding. See you Monday." Monday, like nothing happened. I showed up anyway, still in disbelief, still hoping there'd be some explanation. The front desk guard scanned my badge and frowned. It says inactive." I laughed. Probably a mistake. He shrugged and waved me through manually. My desk was the next surprise. Someone was sitting there. Dylan. My chair, my monitor, my nameplate replaced with his. He looked up, did that little grin he always used when he was uncomfortable. "Hey, man, you're back. Listen, Martin's in a meeting, but—" I didn't let him finish. "What's going on?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "We had to reshuffle while you were away. You kind of went MIA during the trip, so Martin—" "MIA?" I cut in. "You left me there." "Dude, that's not how he told it." I walked straight to Martin's office. The door was half closed. Inside, he was laughing with 2 department heads, sipping coffee like the man hadn't abandoned an employee in another country. When he saw me, his smile didn't even fade. "Evan, you're back. I was going to schedule a meeting this afternoon." "Why did you leave me in Prague?" He blinked, set the cup down. "Because you compromised a client interaction. You were supposed to handle the tech side, not negotiate the deal. That's not true. He leaned back. The client said you made inappropriate suggestions about pricing. I had to step in before it got worse. That was the moment something in me broke. Not loudly, but cleanly. Like glass under pressure finally giving way. I didn't argue. I just said, okay. He smiled faintly. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. I nodded once, turned, and walked out of his office without another word. In the hallway, Dylan avoided my eyes. The HR manager watched me like she already had the memo. And for the first time in years, I realized I was completely alone in a place I'd built my whole life around. That afternoon, I cleared my desk quietly. No scenes, no emails, no explanations. As I stepped outside into the parking lot, the sun was blinding, the air too warm for February. I stood there a moment, staring at my reflection in the glass door, and said it out loud, just to hear how it sounded. He left me there on purpose. I didn't know it yet, but that was the day the line was drawn, the line they were going to regret crossing. But that was just the beginning. I didn't go back the next day. I told myself I needed time to think, but really, I just needed time to stop shaking. You don't expect betrayal to feel quiet, but it does. It's not shouting, not heartbreak. It's just silence, heavy enough to fill every room you walk into. By the end of the week, HR sent me an email. We'd like to discuss your transition period and clarify the termination details. Termination. They hadn't even fired me in person. I showed up Monday anyway. This time my badge didn't work at all. The guard wouldn't even look at me when he said, "Sorry, sir, you're no longer on the active list." Inside, through the glass doors, I could see Dylan leading the team meeting. My team. He was using my slides, my formatting, even the same damn phrase I'd used in every presentation. We build reliability through simplicity. The kind of corporate poetry I once believed in. I waited until the meeting ended. When he came out, I stepped into his path. "Where's Martin?" "In his office," Dylan said, avoiding my eyes. "He's in back-to-back calls." "Then I'll wait," he exhaled. "Look, Evan, it's messy, I get it. Martin said it's temporary just until things cool off." "Until what cools off?" He hesitated. "The Prague situation." I laughed, loud enough for heads to turn. "You mean the one where I got abandoned?" "Come on, man," he whispered. "No, it's not like that." But it was exactly like that. Martin eventually emerged, face smooth as ever. He acted surprised to see me, like I'd shown up uninvited to a party. "Evan, I thought we'd handled this professionally over email." "You didn't handle anything," I said. "You lied to the client. You froze the company card. You left me there." He folded his arms. "You were drinking during a client dinner. You mentioned terms we hadn't approved. I had to salvage the deal." "That's not true," I said quietly. He smiled the way people smile when they know they have power. "Believe what you need to. HR will finalize your paperwork this week. I wish you the best." It was like watching a movie where the ending had already been written, and I was just there to play my role, the disposable one. So I left. Again. But this time, I didn't go home to wallow. I went to the co-working cafe down the street, opened my laptop, and started collecting everything I could access before they revoked my credentials completely. Project files, messages, timestamps, client emails. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was insurance, because something didn't add up. The client's final proposal, the one Martin said I compromised, had my name replaced by Dylan's. Even worse, the signature on the approval form looked wrong. It was supposed to be mine, same name, different handwriting. At first, I thought maybe someone had signed on my behalf to rush the process. But then I found another one, and another. 3 signatures, all supposedly mine, across 3 different documents tied to the Prague deal. One of them dated after I'd already been stranded. That was the moment everything shifted. I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup. Martin hadn't just thrown me under the bus. He'd built the road, bought the bus, and handed Dylan the keys. I forwarded the files to my personal email, encrypted them, backed them up twice. Then I started taking notes. Who sent what, when, what was said, who was CC'd. I didn't talk to anyone, didn't post, didn't rage online. I waited, because I knew how men like Martin operated. They didn't plan for quiet enemies. They planned for confrontation, for panic, for emotional outbursts they could use against you, but not for silence. A week later, an email popped up from Dylan. Short, almost friendly. Hey man, no hard feelings, right? As you know how these things go. I just stepped in to help. Hope you're good. I stared at it for a full minute, then typed back, yeah, I'm good. Still figuring things out. Thanks for checking in. I added a smiley at the end. It felt like pressing a trigger. That night, I went through the rest of my files and noticed something subtle. Dylan had been copied on emails to the client long before the trip. He'd been feeding Martin concerns about my performance. They'd been preparing to replace me before the flight even left the ground. I didn't sleep that night, not because of anger, but clarity. It was like watching the pieces fall into place and realizing the picture they formed was you, blindfolded, standing in a spotlight. The next morning, I met a friend of mine, Lila, who worked in a different department. She looked uncomfortable, even sitting with me. They're saying you lost the contract, she whispered. Martin told the execs you panicked and skipped the return flight. Did he show proof? I asked. She hesitated. He showed your boarding record. Says it was canceled by you. That made my stomach drop. I hadn't canceled anything. The ticket was never in my name to begin with. They'd rewritten everything. The story, the receipts, even the paper trail. I walked out of that cafe and stood on the curb, watching the traffic roll by, trying to decide between screaming and laughing, because they thought they'd erased me. But what they didn't know was that I had already started writing their ending. That evening, I opened a new document on my laptop. Title, Timeline of Events, Prague Incident. I started typing. Every detail, every timestamp, every name. It took me 3 days to finish. When I was done, I sent it to an old contact, someone who'd left our company for a position in the parent firm's compliance department. In London. Subject line, possible internal misconduct. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. The air smelled like rain, the kind that comes right before a storm. And as the first drops hit the pavement, I felt something strange. Not anger, not vengeance, just control. Because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't reacting. I was waiting. And I knew one thing for sure. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you finally stop defending yourself. When you stop begging people to believe you and start preparing for them to remember you. By the time the compliance office in London responded, I was already mentally gone from that company. The message came 3 days later. We've received your report. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Could you provide copies of all relevant documentation? I did. Every email, every signature, every timestamp. I didn't dramatize it. I just sent facts. No emotion, no commentary. Facts are cleaner than revenge. The next week, HR called me to clarify the final steps of separation. It wasn't hard to sit through, not after everything. They made me sign a form saying I wouldn't speak publicly about internal matters. I signed it, smiled. They thought that piece of paper would muzzle me, but the truth doesn't need a press release. It just needs time. 2 weeks later, Martin and Dylan started showing cracks. It began with whispers, small, quiet, curious. Someone from headquarters was asking questions about the Prague deal. Martin brushed it off in a meeting, saying, "Routine audit happens all the time." But people noticed how he started closing his office door more often, how Dylan suddenly looked like he hadn't slept. I watched it from a distance. I had no access to their systems anymore, but I didn't need one. When you know how someone lies, you can predict exactly where the truth will cut them. Then came the call. London. A woman named Claire. Soft British accent. calm voice, the kind that makes you want to tell her everything. Mr. Reed, I'd like to verify a few points from your statement. We went line by line. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I mentioned the falsified signatures, she said quietly, "We have reason to believe you're correct. The documents you submitted differ from the archived copies." That sentence alone was worth every sleepless night. By the end of the week, the storm hit full force. Dylan called me at 9:47 p.m. I remember because I was in the middle of washing dishes, and the ringtone felt almost cinematic. "Evan, man, what the hell did you do?" "Good evening to you, too." "They're investigating Martin. Legal's involved. They've pulled all the Prague files. Claire, or whatever her name is, she's asking everyone for statements. They think I forged the signatures." I let him talk. The panic in his voice was real this time. "Evan, I swear I didn't—" "You signed them," I said calmly. "Or at least you pretended to. That's enough." "You're going to ruin both of us," he shouted. "Only one of us deserves that," I replied, and hung up. The next morning, the office went into lockdown mode. Everyone had to re-verify their digital signatures, submit access logs, hand in company devices. Half the staff didn't even know what was happening. They just felt the tension in the air. Martin stopped showing up to meetings. Dylan stopped showing up altogether. Then one Thursday afternoon, it happened. The company's Slack lit up with a single announcement from corporate HR. Effective immediately, Martin Greaves and Dylan Ward are no longer employed with the company. Interim leadership structure will be communicated shortly. No reasons, no explanations, just silence. The kind of silence that carries more weight than any headline. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and sat there, just breathing, not smiling, not gloating, just quiet. Because this wasn't triumph. It wasn't even justice. It was gravity. Everything had finally fallen where it belonged. That weekend, Claire called again. "Mr. Reed, I wanted to personally thank you for your cooperation. I can't share internal outcomes, but I can assure you your report prevented a significant loss." "I didn't do it for them," I said. She paused. "Then why did you do it?" I thought for a moment. Because I was tired of pretending that being loyal meant being silent. She didn't respond, but I heard something like approval in the quiet that followed. After that call, I stopped checking my inbox, stopped watching the company's LinkedIn updates, stopped replaying that night in Prague over and over in my head. But the thing about storms is, even when they pass, the air still smells like rain. 2 weeks later, I got an email from an unknown address. "I heard what happened. You don't know me, but I used to work for Martin." Same story, same tactics. I never had proof. "Thank you for doing what I couldn't." No signature, no name, just that. I sat there reading it over and over until the words blurred. And for the first time since everything started, I felt something that wasn't anger. It was relief. I didn't post about it, didn't tell anyone. The revenge wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Because the best kind isn't when they know you won. It's when they can't stop wondering how you did. That Friday, I cleaned out my apartment, threw away the old company notebooks, deleted the files, the backups, everything. I didn't need them anymore. The story was finished on paper, but not in me. Not yet. Because every time I closed my eyes, I still saw that hotel lobby in Prague. The woman at the desk saying, "Sir, the card is declined." The quiet betrayal behind it. The moment my name disappeared from a flight manifest, like I'd never existed. And then, like an echo I'd been waiting for, I realized something. Maybe that's exactly what I needed. To disappear. At least from their version of me. I walked out that night with no plan, no badge, no company. Just my own name again. They thought I'd been erased. But you can't erase someone who's already rewritten the story. 6 months passed before I saw either of them again. By then, my life had shifted into something quieter, steadier. The kind of rhythm you don't notice until you realize it doesn't hurt anymore. I'd found a new job in a smaller firm, nothing flashy. No open offices or family culture nonsense. Just work. Clean, honest work. I handled logistics for a team that respected silence more than slogans. My boss was blunt, fair, and allergic to drama. It felt like breathing clean air after years in smoke. My apartment was smaller too. One bedroom, a narrow balcony, and a coffee maker that only brewed one cup at a time. I liked that. It made everything feel exact, measured, like life had finally stopped demanding more than I had to give. Sometimes I thought about Prague, not often, just enough to remember what it cost me to stop trusting people who weaponize charm. I didn't hate Martin or Dylan anymore. I didn't need to. Hate keeps you tethered to the people who wronged you. I'd already cut the rope. Then came the conference. Our firm sent me to a regional industry event in Chicago. 3 days of panels, networking, and lukewarm coffee in paper cups. I almost declined. The idea of hotel lobbies and name tags still carried ghosts. But my manager insisted. You should show your face, Evan. People remember competence. So I went. It was the second night, a mixer in the hotel lounge, when I saw them. Martin first. His hair was thinner, his posture shorter. He was leaning on the bar, talking to a man in a suit who clearly wasn't listening. Then Dylan, standing a few feet away, scrolling through his phone like he wished it could swallow him whole. They looked smaller, not physically. Smaller in that way people do when the arrogance leaves and the reality moves in. I almost didn't recognize them, almost kept walking. But something made me stop. I ordered a drink, sat at a corner table near enough for them to notice me, far enough to let the moment breathe. It took about 10 seconds. Dylan saw me first. His eyes widened, flicked to Martin, then back to me. Martin turned, followed his gaze, and froze. For a second, no one moved. It was like time paused just to savor the look on their faces. Then Martin smiled that same empty smile he'd used in Prague. Evan, well, this is unexpected. Is it? I said. Dylan's hand trembled around his glass. Didn't know you were still in the industry. Guess I didn't get the memo, I said. Martin straightened, trying to reclaim his old authority. I hope there are no hard feelings. Things ended. Complicatedly. Complicatedly, I repeated. That's one word for it. He laughed softly, nervous. You know how corporate politics can get. Misunderstandings, mixed signals. I leaned in slightly. My voice stayed calm, even. You forged my signature on 3 contracts and left me in another country. His jaw twitched. The room seemed to fade around us. The chatter, the clinking glasses, the soft jazz. Just the 3 of us in that quiet standoff. Dylan broke first. Evan, we didn't mean for... I cut him off. You meant every bit of it. You just didn't mean to get caught. He looked down. Martin shifted his weight, like he wanted to walk away, but couldn't. I took a sip of my drink, set it down carefully. You both taught me something, I said finally. Never trust people who smile during layoffs. Neither of them spoke. Dylan's throat moved, like he wanted to apologize, but didn't know how. Martin's composure cracked. Not dramatically, just a small, visible fracture. I stood, buttoned my jacket. You don't owe me anything, I said quietly. And I don't owe you forgiveness. Then I left. I didn't look back, but I could feel their eyes following me as I crossed the room. The kind of stare that comes from people suddenly realizing they're no longer the story. Outside, the city felt wide and indifferent, the way cities always do when you've finally stopped needing them to care. The wind off the lake was sharp, cold, clean. I walked without direction, just breathing. For a moment, I thought about what they must be thinking now, seeing me alive, steady, unbroken, wondering how much I'd told, how much I still could. I smiled to myself. Let them wonder. Revenge wasn't the moment I watched them fall. It was the life I built after, one they couldn't touch, couldn't rewrite, couldn't fake. Back in my hotel room, I stood by the window, watching the city lights reflect off the glass. A quiet thought crossed my mind. the same one that started everything. We'll cover your expenses when you're back, if you still are. I exhaled, almost laughing. I was back. Not for them, not for closure, just for me. A week later, I got an email from Claire, short and simple. Audit completed. Your report has been archived with commendation. Thank you again for your integrity. I didn't reply. Some things don't need answers. Instead, I forwarded it to myself, a small reminder, then deleted it from my inbox. That night, I went out to the balcony with a beer and the sound of distant traffic. The air was cool, still carrying the faint scent of rain. I looked up at the quiet skyline and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. No noise, no fear, no pretending. Just stillness. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw me again, and I didn't need them to.